This podcast is brought to you by Podcast Nation.
Canva presents your work horoscope for this week. Deadlines are in retrograde, which we all know can bring some intense energy. Our advice: fend off this forecast with Canva. Like Canva whiteboards to counter creative blocks, and Canva docs for clarity in communications. If you have any sales deals coming through, results will be in your favor with Canva presentations, manifesting many wins for you. It's a great week to love your work at canva.com.
Welcome to Nirvana Sisters podcast, where we take the intimidation out of well-being and beauty to help you achieve your highest state, your nirvana. We are sisters-in-law and your hosts. I'm Amy Sherman.
And I'm Katie Chandler. So let's get into some real conversation. Welcome back to the show, Nirvana Sisters family. Today, we are super excited to introduce you to Jenna Longoria, aka the Period Guru. Jenna is a board-certified functional nutrition practitioner specializing in women's hormones. She was listed by Huffington Post as one of the top 20 new health writers to follow in 2017. That's so cool. And her work has been featured in Mind, Body, Green, NBC, The Elephant Journal. She's also an author. Her book is The Period Solution 28-Day Hormone Balancing Guide. Through her virtual private practice, Jenna helps women reclaim their hormones and digestive health with a multidisciplinary approach combining functional medicine, nutrition, and diagnostic lab testing in her results-driven root cause program. She's a firm believer that the right diet and lifestyle can put any hormonal condition into remission, and I think that is super exciting. I just can't wait to hear all about it because this is going to be so helpful for so many people. So welcome to the show, Jenna.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on today, Katie. Thank you, Amy. Happy to talk about hormones, periods, and anything else that we're guided to discuss today.
That's great. Well, we usually start our show with our Nirvana of the week. So it's just a little moment that brought you joy. So I'm gonna kick it to Amy to let her get it started.
Sure. Well, my Nirvana this week might be similar to Katie's because we had a baby birth in the family. So my cousin Matt and his wife just had their first baby girl. And they, we haven't met her yet, but she was born, I guess, like last weekend. So it's just really cute to see them, have a new little family. They had a little girl named Cora, Cece for short. And it was just really exciting. I'm excited to meet her. We'll probably meet her in the next few weeks, but they got married during COVID and just had the baby during COVID. So it's just interesting time, but yeah, it's just cute to see them with a newborn and all excited about parenthood. So that was my Nirvana. And I'll pass it to you, Katie.
Yeah, that's, definitely part of my Nirvana. It's so great to have another little baby in the family and maybe the last one for a long time until grandkids come into the
right.
picture.
Or until they have a second.
Until they have a second, which hopefully they do. Fingers crossed. But I also had a little moment of Nirvana this morning, about an hour ago. I'm feeling really great today, physically, mentally, just having a great day, feeling like myself after being a little under the weather for a while. And after I dropped my daughter off from preschool, I just jammed out to my new favorite song in the car. I blasted it as loud as I possibly could. I didn't care that people thought I was an absolute idiot in the stops, waiting at the stoplight. And I just had a moment of euphoria where I just felt the music in my body and my soul. And it just brought me so much joy and kind of, woke me up and started my day. So that was mine. What about you, Jenna?
Well, so for the week, right? Or is it today?
Could be anything. Week,
anything.
Day.
Yeah.
Well, I've practiced in a yoga shala for the first time this Wednesday. So I practice Ashtanga yoga in the mornings, and before lockdown, it was like an everyday 6-day a week, would practice with my community every morning, rain or shine, 6 a.m. And it was a little bit of soul crushing when all that closed during COVID. And so I just moved to Amsterdam, and this Wednesday I finally found a new home shala, and I joined the program and I practiced, and it was just the best feeling ever to unroll my mat and just practice with people and get all sweaty and leave and feel great. It's just like the best way to start the day for me personally. So I was really grateful for that, to practice again with people in a community.
That's
so
great.
nice.
And you're glowing. I can say you've got that yoga glow. Well, what is a shala? You have to explain that to me because I'm a yogi, but I don't know this one.
Yeah. So shala is like a home for yoga. So in like the yoga scripture, the yoga by the Hatha Yoga Pradipika or Yoga Sutras by Patanjali, they call it a shala. So it's like a home for yoga instead of a studio. It's like, I guess, the Sanskrit word yoga shala.
I love that. Okay. Very cool. All right. Well, let's get right into it because we have so much to talk about. We've got a few quick fire questions for you. First, let's just start out with the basics. How long have you been a functional nutritionist and what were you doing before you became the fabulous period guru?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It was just such a crazy road that led me here. So I've been doing this for about 8 years now. And this is definitely I didn't wake up when I was, little and say, I'm going to be the period guru when I grow up. But I actually originally was in grad school in Washington, D.C. at American University. And I was an associate producer for a political radio show. And that was like my first life. I had horrible period problems and hormone issues. And they eventually just got so bad. And, they started when I was 14. So I really think our pain is our purpose. I always had issues, but at 14, I was put on the birth control pill to mask the issues. And turns out I have polycystic ovarian syndrome and endometriosis. And I was just kind of trying to stay on the birth control pill and just, ignore my body. And then one day I just had this wake up call. I need to take care of myself. And so I did before I quit grad school and before I quit my job in DC, I started to look into holistic modalities, got off the birth control pill. And then I realized that that's actually what I wanted to do. I wanted to share this with other females because I knew that there was another way than just taking the birth control pill to solve every problem. And so I did that. And I went back to school, became a nutritionist, and have devoted my life to helping other women balance their hormones.
And you have been practicing as the period guru for how many years now?
At first I was just a nutritionist and I just, my business was Healthier Notions. And I just was kind of, people were coming to me for the kind of common weight loss kind of thing. And I would always ask them about their periods. And one day, one of my clients lovingly and jokingly said, "You're the period guru. You always ask about my period and they should call you the period guru." And I was like, that actually clicks, So I guess that was about 4 years ago now, I completely rebranded and changed my focus to just serving women and more about hormone balance, became the period guru because I realized that, first of all, weight loss is just a symptom of inflammation and it's a symptom of an imbalance. So when I help my clients achieve hormone balance, fix their digestion issues, optimize their gut, then weight loss is just a side effect. It's not something we're really focusing on.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting that you say that because I've had kind of a personal experience with that recently. But yes, okay. So you touched on it a bit. So you have endometriosis and PCOS.
Correct.
Yeah. How old were you?
I'm one of the lucky winners. I get both.
The double, right? Of course. How long? Yeah. Was that in your teens that you realized?
Well, I never got a diagnosis until I was in my 20s because when I started menstruating around 13, and then at 14, I was just having these horrendous periods. And a lot of, those polycystic ovaries and the little ovary, they're not really cysts, they're little follicles and large follicles. But I was having that and the doctor put me on birth control pill. He was like, "This will fix it." He never gave me a diagnosis or anything like that. And so as a child, my hormones were cut off completely. And I had a lot of side effects from the birth control pill. Like I really reacted negatively to it. I gained weight. I became depressed, had crippling anxiety. Then at 15, they had to put me on Prozac because of that. And it turned out that I'm not a depressed person, actually. As soon as I got off birth control pill a decade later, that all kind of went away. And so, that's why when I got off the birth control pill, we were able to discover the real issue because it silenced the symptom. When I was on the birth control pill at 14, I didn't have painful periods anymore. I didn't have a period. So if you're on birth control, you don't have a period. You have a withdrawal bleed. So I wasn't having pain anymore. I wasn't having, those issues, but I was having tons of other side effects. So when I finally got off of it, we were able to realize, oh, wow, you have endometriosis. So they say, it's an average of 10 years to get a diagnosis. And that's absolutely true, because I didn't get an official diagnosis until not until I was like 27. So more than 10 years.
Wow.
I knew when I got off the birth control pill and started having painful periods, I'm like, I know I have to have endometriosis. And the only way you can get official diagnosis is through a laparoscopic procedure. So they have to cut you open and they have to look. So, that's a lot of that can cause scar tissue. That's a surgery, so not everybody wants to have that diagnostic tool done. But when I was on my honeymoon, when I was, my honeymoon, I had an ovarian cyst rupture, and it ruptured around it hemorrhaged, actually tore off a piece of my ovary. And I had to go to the hospital in Thailand and get an emergency surgery.
Oh
and
my
when
God.
they were in there, they were like, you're riddled with endometriosis. You're absolutely.
Wow.
And I was like, that makes so much sense. I've already known this, but it confirms it. So, and that's when I just knew that I had to figure this out, because the only option, I went back to the doctor. They're like, well, just get back on the pill. And I was like, I don't want to do that. There has to be another way.
That's
Why
like
is it
quick fix?
It is. In allopathic
ridiculous.
medicine, it's like, if you haven't had kids, but you don't want to have kids yet, and you have issues, they put you on the pill to fix it. If you can't get pregnant and you have issues, then they immediately send you to a fertility clinic or want to give you Clomid or metformin or whatever. And then after you've had kids and you have issues, they just want to give you a hysterectomy. Like, that's really the three top.
It's wild. It's so true. Yeah. Yeah. Western medicine, it's like, let's just put a Band-Aid on instead of digging deeper and seeing what the root cause of it is, which hence, there you go. Root cause program.
Yeah.
I assume that's.
Yeah. Because I was told that I would never cycle naturally and never ovulate naturally. I was told that I wouldn't be able to start a family without lots of drugs and interventions. I mean, I don't have kids yet, but I haven't tried. But I ovulate regularly every month. I have pain-free periods for the most part. There's a few a year that maybe might be a little bit painful, but I'll take that from my periods every single month of the year. Used to just put me in so much pain. Pain medicine did nothing. I would get nauseous because there was so much pain. I thought I was going to have to go to the emergency room. It's possible. And all of this with just diet, lifestyle changes, doing the right functional labs, and supporting my body and giving it what it needs so I can get back.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So you've been able to manage this all through what you were just saying, diet, lifestyle, labs. Like, can you tell us a little bit more about that journey? Because Katie and I will talk later, but Katie has an autoimmune and other things, and I have things. So it's just interesting to hear how you kind of get there. And then we'll kind of take you through some of the experience that we've had.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's like Western medicine looks at everything in isolation. That's just how they're trained. And they're trained to diagnose. And it's just a different type of medicine. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just, it's good when it's used for when you need Western medicine, like if I was in a car crash or when I had the surgery, when my ovarian cyst ruptured and I almost died because it tore off a chunk of my ovary. I am so glad I had a surgeon there that was trained. Absolutely thrilled. Like, it saved my life. But for the most part, when we're talking about preventative care or talking about nutrition and supporting our body before there's a disease, before it becomes like this severe issue, Western medicine fails us. And especially women, we are grossly underserved in the health industry. Like, if a man goes in and complains that his, testes are hurting, or his, he can't have he can't get an erection, they're going to run every single lab under the sun on him. They're going to give him Viagra, which, they're going to just really take it seriously. But a woman comes in and she complains of painful periods like I did growing up. And they're like, well, just take the pill, or that's just part of being a woman. Which actually there was a research study showing they were measuring the pressure of women who are having period cramps versus the pressure on women when they have contractions in labor. And I don't know the exact number, but it was something like 10 times more on these women's period cramps who had endometriosis.
Oh my
so
goodness.
I have literally had clients who have told me that after they had kids, it confirmed that their worst period pain was worse than a contraction. They were like, my labor was nothing compared to my period pain. And so it's invalidated, our pain is invalidated in the doctor's office. So there's that, like, we're not given it's not given the attention it deserves. Going back to like what I did and how I supported my body is really just by kind of stop going to the allopathic medicine. I was looking for something else. So insanity, the definition of insanity is trying to do the same thing, right? Expecting a different outcome. So I was going to doctor, and they're all telling me the same thing. And I was frustrated. And I was like, well, if I want Thai food, I'm not going to go to a pizza restaurant and get mad when they don't give me Thai food.
Right.
Go to a Thai restaurant. So
right.
I was looking more into the functional world in which we look at systems, and in functional medicine, we're looking at all of your systems together, not in isolation, not like just at the liver and the eyes and the ovaries and the hormones. We're looking at everything together and supporting that. It's a mix of, the right functional labs. So I find a lot of doctors, they don't test the right markers. They don't get adequate testing. Insurance doesn't cover adequate testing. So there's no way going to your conventional doctor that you're going to really dive deep and really understand what's going on with your thyroid, with your hormones, because the testing is really outdated. And it's also just a moment in time. So like one day you could have something, but the next day you may not, right? Yeah, it's true. And I mean, that's a whole nother thing. A lot of doctors don't understand the timing of hormone tests. So I'll have clients that come in, they're like, yeah, my doctor did all my panels and my progesterone's low. And I'm like, that they tested your progesterone on day 5. Like, of course you haven't ovulated yet. Like, I don't understand. Like there's a precise time to test certain hormones, and there's so it's, and usually that doesn't happen when you go to just a regular OB. And so with functional medicine, you use the right labs, you test at the right time, you test the right markers, and you look at everything in a whole. And then you're also supporting your body through nutrition. So a lot with hormones, I will say, like, especially polycystic ovarian syndrome, the number one thing you can do to make a difference is to change what you're eating, support your blood sugar levels, because insulin is a hormone, and that's where it all starts. Insulin is a hormone. And if we have too much insulin, if we're insulin resistant, then there are going to be big problems with the rest of our hormones, because it influences cortisol, it influences your sex hormones. And so what's up with women with polycystic ovarian syndrome? Most of them are insulin resistant. So when we put them on a kind of, a lower carb nutrition plan, and we support them with enough protein and fat, then their blood sugar balances and their symptoms go into remission. And so it really is about what you eat. And so supporting all of that, and that's really what I did. I just had to go, I was like a detective. In functional health, We're detectives. We're looking at everything. And I will say, I have not had one client who has come to me that has had a normal thyroid. Their doctors have said that their thyroid was fine. I've not had one client whose thyroid was actually fine. The worst case scenario, I had a client, and she had been going to really like in Orange County, one of the creme de la creme of fertility clinics. Okay. Spent, I don't know how much money on how many rounds of IVF. Young. She was only like 29. And she comes to me and she's like, none of it's working. And I was like, and so I'm like, we need a thyroid lab. And she's like, well, my doctor has run these labs. And I'm like, that's, doesn't tell us anything. But then I did happen to look at one of it, and it was her TSH, and it was like the highest TSH level. I won't get too complicated in test markers that I've ever seen. And I was like, your doctor has never asked for further thyroid testing after this TSH. I didn't want to alarm her, but I was like, after this TSH reading, she's like, never. And I was like, how many rounds have you had of IVF? She's like, 3. She had never had she had Hashimoto's, and I was like, we did more testing, found out she had Hashimoto's. I'm like, no, I cannot, that is a crime that they took her money, her husband's money, let them do all these rounds of IVF, but never gave her a simple thyroid test to find out that she has Hashimoto's. And that's why she wasn't getting pregnant. So as soon as we fixed that, literally the next month she got pregnant.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I have Hashimoto's as well. And the thyroid, I know how impactful it can be. And also so many of these doctors, they say that you're doing well because your labs aren't maybe necessarily like in range, but not ideal and optimal. And I think that's also a big thing. Have you noticed that in your practice?
Yeah. I mean, I have definitely. So I use functional ranges, not conventional ranges. Conventional ranges are the aggregate of like the standard American. So really what we want is functional, like right there in the sweet spot in the middle. And yeah, so most conventional doctors will use the conventional ranges, and then they won't test all the thyroid markers that we need. As I said, they usually just test TSH, which is a brain hormone. It doesn't tell us what's going on with the thyroid. Sometimes they'll test total T4, but that's something that I never test with my clients. So in Hashimoto's, it's very common. It's on the rise. I have Hashimoto's too. And, there's also usually when you have one autoimmune condition, you have more than one. It's like kind of this, polycystic ovarian syndrome. There's a lot of research out there pointing that it could actually be an immune disease, an autoimmune disease, which I'm kind of think that is right.
Question for you on that. So like something like Hashimoto's, I know a lot of people that have that and they take like medicine for it, Synthroid or whatever. Like, since you have Hashimoto's, are you taking anything or are you doing more of like your functional strategy and not needing to take those type of medicines?
Yeah. So here's the thing. I do think that it's overprescribed. I think thyroid medicine is overprescribed and it's used as like it's just like, okay, take this and fix all and not getting to the root cause. Why is your thyroid under functioning? So about 80% of the cases of hypothyroid is actually Hashimoto's, they estimate. And so that's a lot of, chances are if you're listening to this and you have thyroid issues, you have an 80% chance that you have Hashimoto's. I've seen people with Hashimoto's reverse their symptoms and not have to take thyroid medicine. I see it in my practice with my clients. But alternatively, I see it too, where we reverse their symptoms, but they still have to take some thyroid medicine for I don't know how long, because it is an autoimmune condition and their body's literally attacking their thyroid. And if their thyroid medicine actually works, and that's winning, because there are some people with Hashimoto's that the thyroid medicine doesn't even work. And so I do take a little bit of thyroid medicine. It's the only pharmaceutical I take, but it's a glandular, it's bioidentical. And I'm just grateful that my body responds to it. If you did my blood levels, it doesn't even look like I have Hashimoto's. I have no antibodies. Well,
and I'm sure all the other things you're doing is contributing to that. So it's really like the best of both worlds in a way.
Yeah, it is. But it is. And, I'm grateful for it. And I would like one day I'd like to get off of it. And I'm that's the end goal and working towards it. But I also accept the reality that might not happen and just happy that it's here for me.
And stable.
Right?
Yeah. My thyroid has been unstable at times and now it's stable and it's something to be very grateful for.
Yeah. It's funny, Katie, because she knows how to read all the labs much better than me. And I had a physical one year, it was a couple of years ago. And my thyroid was like a little bit increased. It wasn't bad, but it was like increased from where it was. And I said to Katie, I'm like, oh, the doctor said it's fine. She's like, yeah, it might be, but you should ask for XYZ test. I don't remember what test it was, Katie. And so I went back and I asked for that test and they ran it and it looked really good. So I was thankful for that. But I wouldn't have even known as like a normal average person that goes to the doctor to even ask because the doctor said it was fine. But Katie, since she just is so deep and knows this world much better than me, she was like reading my labs and she's like, no, you should push on that. And I was so thankful that she knew that. But most people don't even know that. And so I think it's like being an advocate for yourself. And if something doesn't feel right, don't always listen to the doctor, like keep going further.
Yeah. Listen to your body.
Do you teach your clients that about self-advocating?
Oh, absolutely. That's the part of the program. When I work with my clients, like I always tell them, I'm not the gatekeeper to health. I'm just showing you the roadmap there. And so working with me in my program is a lot of that education based too, to have the tools so that you can be your own best health advocate moving forward, learn how to interpret your labs, read your labs, and also speak up for yourself. Like, I love it when my clients are like, if I, say, okay, I'd like you to do this, but why am I doing this? And I read something about this. I don't get offended and like, why aren't you just listening to me? I told you this is what you should do. And you should just, that's what a doctor sometimes does. Right. I'm always like, I'm so glad you researched that and you have questions and you're advocating for yourself. You should always advocate for yourself like that with any healthcare practitioner. And so, that's part of it. And I think that's one of the things that is wrong with the healthcare system is we go to the doctor and we treat them like gods, like everything they say is the golden rule and is like the truth. A lot of times all the time we know our body is better than they do.
Yeah, of course. It's interesting. My mom, she worked as a surgical nurse, worked with doctors her whole life. And she always say to me, they're also just humans. Like you have to remember that what they say you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
It's not always. Yeah. So I want to get into a little bit some of the symptoms that the listeners should look out for. if someone's listening and it's all sounding very familiar to them, what would be some things to watch out for that would lead them to, figuring out if they have endometriosis or PCOS or
just hormonal issues in general, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the first step is, being aware of your menstrual cycle and tracking your period in your menstrual cycle. Your menstrual cycle is a whole event. So it's anywhere from 25 to 35 days. That's a healthy menstrual cycle. You should be bleeding anywhere from 3 to 7 days. That's a healthy period. You shouldn't lose more than 80 milliliters of blood. You shouldn't lose less than 25 milliliters of blood. You should have an app you're charting. Ideally, even better, you're tracking ovulation, even if you're not trying to get pregnant. Tracking ovulation to see if you are ovulating. And then, a lot of times with tracking your ovulation, you're tracking your basal body temperature. That gives insight into your metabolism. So if you start having really low temps, that could signify an adrenal or thyroid issue. So it's a free diagnostic tool that you have every month. It's free. And, by doing that, if something's off, if something goes off 1 month, that's not a big deal. It's normal to have 1 or 2, weird periods a year. But if you're having it like 3 months in a row, then that's an issue. And you should get your hormones tested, investigate, work with a practitioner. And so that would be I would say the first step is to look at your period, because like women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, they might have 2 periods a year, 3 periods a year. So that's a really big sign if you're having irregular periods. In women with endometriosis, you can have period pain every day of the menstrual cycle. It doesn't just have to be on your period. So noting down when you're having this pain and the symptoms and the sensations.
Are there other hormonal conditions that you focus on? What about like perimenopause and things like that? Do you work with women in that realm also?
Yeah. I would say perimenopause is a natural state and more than a condition.
Sure.
Like that's just a natural phase of life. Menopause is a natural phase of life, but there are some women who have really bad transitions. Their perimenopause symptoms are awful, but it doesn't have to be that way. And so I do work with women going through perimenopause, but ideally and those are the women who never address the period and hormone issues at a younger age. And that's why they're having really bad perimenopause symptoms.
Oh, that's interesting.
So the earlier you address these period issues, hormone issues, the more smooth your transition through perimenopause to menopause is going to be.
I see.
Because it's the root cause of these issues is not going away. You can mask it with birth control. You can mask it with whatever, but it's going to be there later. At some point, you're going to have to deal with it. Whether it be when you're trying to get pregnant or whether it be during menopause, perimenopause or menopause.
Our listeners know this, and I've talked about it a little bit, but I have vestibular migraines, which started to appear for me about 5 years ago or so, which is when I really started tracking my periods. But I am still convinced and have told all of my doctors that it's definitely related to hormones, because I noticed that, I haven't had symptoms in a long time, knock on wood, fortunately, but when I have had those symptoms, they're more dramatic right before I'm about to get my period. Like I get that dizzy sort of like vertigo feeling and all of that typically before I get my period. And it doesn't go away after. But it's much less, but it's much more intense. So I kept asking, like, can you test? And they test my hormones. Everything's fine. But then
they tested your hormones though. Like
right, exactly. Everything was fine. So then I went to a functional, like more integrated doctor, and he tested my hormones within a specific time frame. I can't remember if whatever it was past my period or before my, like 14 or 17 days, whatever it was. And that actually checked out at the time pretty good. So that was good. But I still know that it's related to some sort of hormonal issue.
He or she wouldn't have been able to figure it out with the blood test. I see that hormone issue with headaches related to the hormone cycle all the time, but a blood test isn't going to show the way.
So how do you do it?
Is very
if
static.
It's not a blood test.
I use a dried urine test with my clients at a specific time of the cycle, and it shows how the hormones are breaking down, metabolizing or not, the different pathways. It shows the different types of estrogen because there's more than just one. And the blood test just shows like really static.
Is that the markers. Dutch test?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, yeah, I've heard of that.
And that will show, especially with people that have a lot of migraines around menstruation or ovulation, the Dutch test is really needed to show the estrogen detox pathways because there's a lot of correlation between estrogen issues, histamine and your liver function. but it's a very common, it's a very common pattern I see.
Yeah. And
the headaches, and they're awful. I mean, it's just awful. I'm sorry. Like, it's just like,
yeah, well, I'm on medication for the vestibular migraines, but I would like to get off of it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, from a lifestyle standpoint, I think I'm doing all the right things, but who knows? I should probably talk to you offline and figure all that out. But I would like to get to a point where I wean off of it, because I don't obviously want to be on something forever, but it does help with the vertigo symptoms, which are like literally, if you have them, you can't function. So
yeah, no, it
is helpful, but I would like to get to a point where I'm like really understanding, because I do track my period. Like I've always had, my periods have always been regular, but I would say they're between like 35 and 40 days my whole life. So I started tracking everything. Another interesting / random related thing, I think, was when I started getting these vestibular migraines 5 years ago, I also around that time was spotting, which I'd never spotted before. So I feel like it was all related. I'm not anymore. That's all kind of gone away. A lot of it, I think too, was like stress and different things, who knows, but it's just really interesting. So that's when like my eyes opened up about this whole field, which I don't know much about, but ever since then, I've been tracking my period. I have an app that like tracks the phases and all of those things, but clearly I need to learn more. And I'm sure our listeners do too, because you sort of like, it is great that we do have a free diagnostic tool, our period. We know if we're getting it every month, we know how we're feeling. And you sort of, that's like your North Star, like, okay, I'm like a little bit moody because I know I'm getting my period, but it's like your way to track everything. But other than that, it's like, it's hard to go deep if you're not really seeking out the right kind of help. Katie,
and it's like great that you even knew it. It was great that you even had the awareness that you were like, oh, these headaches become worse right before my period. That's huge that you even had that awareness.
And the funny thing was, back to your point about the birth controls, when this was first happening, I did get a lot of different tests done and spoke to a million different doctors. But my OB was like, yeah, go on birth control. It'll help. And I didn't. She gave me the prescription, but I never did it because I was like, I don't want to go on birth control. So I just, tried to figure out, other ways. But you're right. That's like the catch-all. Oh, just go on this and it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's true. My quick fix was surgery. I had such horrible periods after pregnancy that they suggested a hysterectomy, and I was finished with having kids. And I also had other issues from having babies. So this is actually the first time I've mentioned this on the show. So that was the route that I went with. And I was perfectly okay with it. It took me a long time to come to terms with it, but knowing I was finished having children and just being able to remove some symptoms. I have so many symptoms from my 2 autoimmune diseases, to be able to have my hormonal cycle just a little bit more balanced out. It was really a great move for myself personally, but it's very drastic and evasive, and someone that isn't ready for that, and that's their suggestion and their only fix, is really scary and very sad. And there are repercussions. I have horrible scar tissue pain that I get that can be debilitating in my abdomen. But for me personally, it was the right thing. I don't know.
Try some castor oil packs for your wearing those like 3 or 4 nights a week for the scar tissue. What is it? Castor oil packs. Queen of Thrones makes them, these like ready-made castor oil packs, and it's castor oil, and you put it on this like sheepskin like wrap, and you put it on and you wear it at night over your.
Wow.
You can wear it over your liver or over your ovaries and your uterus, and it breaks up scar tissue. So the oil castor oil goes through all the layers of your skin, and it actually breaks up the scar tissue and increases blood flow to your to that area.
That's amazing. Thank you. That is the only
definitely, if you're having scar
heard.
tissue pain, I would definitely get some castor oil packs and do those.
You mentioned earlier, and I totally forgot you were talking about your ovarian cyst, and I had one when I was younger too, which I always knew about because they, caught it during a regular visit. Mm-hmm. And I remember them saying, when you get pregnant, you'll see that it'll probably get bigger, and it'll fill with liquid. So when I first got pregnant with my first child, they monitored it the whole time, and it was like tiny, and it got huge, like to the size of like a grapefruit. So I actually had it drained during my pregnancy, and it was literally like 2 saline bags of fluid of what was in there. Filled right back up, and it ruptured like late into my pregnancy. And speaking of the pain, to your point, it was awful. And I was pregnant. It felt literally like I got stabbed in the side, but it ruptured. And I was so worried about it rupturing my whole pregnancy, because like they said, that could have been a possibility. It ruptured. It was brutal, but then it went away. And for my second I didn't have any pain. Like I always had this dull pain in my right side with my first child, or with my second, I didn't have any of it because it ruptured. So it's just so interesting how these things just happen and come and go. I mean, again, I was aware of it, but if I wasn't, I wouldn't have known what was going on.
Yeah. And it's actually really common for women of childbearing age to have a cyst once every few years or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like what we call a functional cyst. It's very common. And then they can rupture with your period. A lot of doctors will say, just get on the birth control pill to shrink it. But, a lot of times they just go away with your period when you start menstruating. And in my case, I was one of 1% of women where the cyst not only ruptured, but it went into torsion around my ovary and took off a chunk of my ovary. That only happens to 1% of women. That was like that. I've had other cysts burst before, rupture. Having it go in torsion was like having 1,000 cysts rupture at the same time.
I don't even know. And that's so scary. You weren't even in this country.
No, it was like so scary. My husband like rushed me to the hospital. It was like an hour away to like a private hospital in Chiang Mai. And, it was, and there's really good healthcare outside the US. A lot of people think that there's not, but actually sometimes it's better and cheaper.
Yeah. That's good to know.
And so, I was fine, but so it is. So, there's so much, but I'm, the pain of the ovarian cyst, and then doctors will say, get on birth control pill and all this stuff. And it's like, I don't like the birth control pill to them. It's just like, must be nice. It must be easy. I'm just wondering, they should just have a recording, doctors. Here's the prescription for the birth control pill. Like, no matter who comes in,
seriously.
like, do they really need the person there moving? We could just have like an avatar, birth control.
Right.
Birth control.
Right.
Just hit the button.
And to your point, like doctors, whether it's an OB or your regular doctor, whatever, no one is asking about your period, or they do it to check the box, but they're not really going into the root cause of all of these things.
They only care if you're trying to have a baby.
Right.
If you're trying to have a baby, then they care so much. They want to give, fertility panel, all this stuff. It's like, I remember before I could run my own labs, when I was first kind of starting out, now I can get all my blood work and all my labs and stuff. I wanted to get a full hormone panel, and I went to the doctor, and they're like, well, why do you want this? And I was like, because I want to check my hormones. Yeah. Well, no, we can't give you that. I go, and then I just put on my thinking cap and I go, I'm trying to get pregnant. And they're like, oh,
sure.
Why did you say so? Oh yeah. I'm like, you shouldn't have to be trying to get pregnant to find out what's going on with your hormones. It's not like our health only matters when we're ready to host a child. Like, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
What are your thoughts on these home? Like, I know there's a bunch of companies like Everlywell that do different sort of home tests for hormones.
Yeah.
Is that because I think like being able to take it into your own responsibility is so empowering, like to be able to test your blood every month and not have to ask your doctor and have to rationalize it. Like, are those, would you recommend those home sorts of tests, or what do you think about that?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, this is kind of a long-winded answer, but this is the best, like a 3-pronged answer. But first of all, I feel like for thyroid, I think that's great. I like Let's Get Checked for that. They have a thyroid test. That's something that every 6 months we should be checking our thyroid, because it can change overnight. So every 6 months, check your thyroid. If you have Hashimoto's, maybe every 4 months. And it's so easy. It's like, you can order it online, you take it at home. You don't have to faff about with your doctor and be like, I need the full thyroid panel, but no, all you need is TSH. No, I would like the full thyroid panel. No, TSH. And you don't have to like hassle and just like beg and plead with your doctor. And so, but for blood, thyroid is best with blood. So that's why I think that's great. Now, maybe like a full thyroid panel, through Let's Get Checked or something like that, or Everlywell once a year is great, but what we really want to be testing besides the thyroid, what we really want to be testing more than the hormones is our gut. So I think everybody really wants to test the hormones, but hormones is really, it's important to do every once in a while, but the gut is really something that most people never test their gut. And you can't have healthy hormones without a healthy gut. That's why with my clients, I always test the gut first. We do a comprehensive GI, stool test, the GI map, because we have to fix the gut infections before you'll ever have a healthy thyroid or other hormones. And so that's what I would say would be the most important. And then and then once you get everything in check, those tests are very empowering to just monitor your own health and check in with those and do those. That's great.
So how do you do that? How do you how do you test your gut? I don't think I've ever done that.
Yeah. So it's a stool test that you take at home.
Okay.
So they give you all the instructions and stuff. It's not the most glamorous, but it's quick and easy.
What's the site or product that does that?
Well, they don't, you have to have a license to order it. So you have to go through a practitioner.
Okay.
So it's not like Everly Well and all of those where you can do a blood test.
So you have to go to a doctor and you ask for what?
Or it doesn't have to be a doctor. It can be someone like me, a nutritionist or a dietitian, a functional dietitian, or you. As far as I know, I don't think allopathic doctors run this type of, usually if they do anything with the gut, they do they look for structural issues, for polyps and things like that. And they don't, or maybe they run sometimes for like certain parasites, but they don't do a comprehensive GI assay, which is like just looking at your immune system function, your bacteria levels, whether if you have a gluten sensitivity, it's looking at for parasites and H. pylori and viruses. And it's just.
So you would go to a functional doctor or nutritionist and ask for a comprehensive GI function. I'm like writing it down because I need
but,
to
honestly, and a good way to determine if the practitioner is good, basically, is that that's what they're offering. Yeah. And that's where they want to start.
I had,
no one's even ever tested that on me.
Right. Well, I went to a GI gastroenterologist, and it was, during the height of the pandemic this summer, and I had horrible SIBO. And of course it took me a long time to figure out what SIBO was. And I was doing all this research, trying to figure out if I could get some answers, and found out that that's what it was. It wasn't through a doctor that I got that diagnosis, but the only test they did for me was a colonoscopy. And then she said, we can attempt this rifaxian. And we did that. And then it revealed a candida overgrowth that she refused to even acknowledge as real. Wow. Yeah. So they will do nothing, to your point, what you were saying. It's just like, it's for polyps. It's,
it's to rule out like pathology. Think about it. They're looking for cancer. They're looking for structural issues. And that's great. And it's great to have those routine colonoscopies after you get a certain age. But when we have these people having heartburn, and then all the doctor wants to give them is protein pump inhibitors, which suppress your stomach acid, which is the worst thing you could possibly be doing for someone, then they get addicted to it, and they've been taking it their whole life, and they have osteoporosis and all these issues later down the line. Why don't we test their gut and just figure it out? It's just like, it's so easy. I remember this one 35-year-old, a friend of a friend, and he was like, he had all these colonoscopies and all these issues because he had such bad heartburn and IBS. And the doctors kept on saying, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. Nothing. And I'm like, why don't it just stool tests? Like, there is something wrong if you're complaining of this. And they were like, well, just take Prozac or take these, what are those protein pump inhibitors, like the standard drugs that Zyrtec, no, not Zyrtec's allergy. What's the one that Xantax. Yes. And I mean, just like, that is just such lazy medicine. It's like, let's just silence the symptom and not figure out what is going on. And so the gut is really the best place to start. And when you have a candida is like the third tier. That's the side effect of bacteria imbalances, possible parasitic infections. And it's not where you start treating somebody is with the candida, because if you just treat the candida, that's superficial. It's going to grow right back if you don't get rid of the other imbalances in the gut.
That's interesting, because that's me. That's my life. I have repeated candida overgrowth, and I take a fluconazole literally once a week, which to manage it, it's and also with diet does help. Which is where you would come in.
Exactly. But you can be doing all the right things and be frustrated and do all the right things and do a candida diet or all these things, but it's not you're going to hit a plateau. You're never going to go anywhere if you don't investigate the other issues.
So that is a great segue into what you do, because I would love to hear a bit about your root cause program and your coaching that you do, so the listener can reach out to you.
Oh yeah. Well, I love it. I love working with women in this capacity, and it's a 4-month program. So, I found over a lot of trial and error, and after working with hundreds of clients, that you can't Amazon Prime your health. Unfortunately, everyone wants, like a quick fix, and I still get messages. Oh, can you just do a 1 session? And I just don't do that, because it's unrealistic on both practitioner and patient to think that you can get these results when you've been having these health issues for years. some of these women, decades coming to me, we can't fix this in one session. And I want people leaving my program happy. And so that takes about 3 to 4 months. And we do the GI map, which is the gut test that we talked about. We do the Dutch hormone test, which is the hormone test I discussed. And we have 5 sessions over the course of these 4 months. And we tackle every system in the body, the liver, neurotransmitters, our estrogen metabolism. We look at our blood sugar, diet, all of these things, and support the detox pathways and look at everything in unison. And at the same time, they're being empowered themselves because they're learning this new language. They're learning this body literacy. They're learning how to be advocates for their health and understanding what's going on, maybe learning some propensities that their body has towards certain illnesses or certain, things so that they can be proactive and take care of themselves. And then also, just know their bodies better, so to continue advocating for themselves so they can be their own health advocates, because no one can give you back your health. If someone's advertising like, hey, that's not possible. No doctor, no nutritionist, no one can give you your health. You have to do that yourself. We're just it's just a roadmap, and we're helping you get there, and we're supporting you, and we're able to run these tests
and proactive versus like reactive based on something terrible that could happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So you do that over the 4 months and you evaluate, and then based on like all of the data and all the conversations, you then what? Do you prescribe someone like a program? Like what happens after that?
So, in the 4 months working together, I first start off with like an initial health session, and we make some foundational, recommendations with diet and with exercise and with maybe some targeted supplements or herbs, which I use therapeutically in my practice, because that's another thing. I see a lot of naturopaths and I see a lot of nutritionists out there just throwing supplements at people. Like that's also symptom
care. Take a probiotic.
Yeah. Right. And like that, and that's symptom care relief to just take all of these supplements just as much as a doctor is prescribing all these pharmaceuticals. So it's like kind of same, but different. And so, so therapeutically, maybe I'll be like, for 60 days, you need to take this supplement for what we found on this test, like XYZ, we're going to take this supplement for 60 days. Here's why. And then we go over the gut testing in the second session, and I design a protocol for them, and I help support them over the GI protocol. We have a follow-up session to see how things are going. The 4th session, that's when we go into the hormones, because that's fine tuning. As much as everyone wants to do the hormones first, because everyone's always so excited about the hormones, it's really the last place to start. We're fine tuning things there. And then we have a follow-up after that. And then, and generally, I pride myself in not having repeat customers, because we're able to get to the root cause. So they love to check in with me. I have my clients to check in like once or twice a year, so I can go over their lab, to retest and just see how things are going or give them some support. But really, my goal is to have them have their own wings to fly and just kind of be able to advocate for themselves moving forward.
Yeah, this is so eye-opening. I need to do this program with you, because I've never really looked into my gut, because I really haven't. I don't know. I just never thought about it. Like, to your point, it was always like, oh, the hormones with the headaches and the this and the that, but it could be my gut. Who knows? I definitely don't have a regular.
If you're having the headaches too, that was my first thought.
And I've never been like regular, as you would say, in that department. So,
and to be honest, it's not just you, it's every human being on the planet needs a gut test at some point, because we're bombarded with pharmaceuticals in our water and our drinking water. We've taken antibiotics growing up, birth control, pollution, pesticides, toxins in our cosmetics. Our liver needs a tune-up. Our gut and liver need a tune-up. We all need to tune up.
I think that's really important for our listeners too, because I think you hear everywhere gut health, but I actually don't really know what that means. Like, I didn't really know that this test you're talking about exists, where you can really look deeper into what that means, because you hear things like gut health and take this versus like doing these tests to figure out what you actually need. So I think that's something that everyone should be looking into, including myself. I have a question for you, just on a side note, when we're talking about hormones, gut health. So I wasn't on birth control. I never took the birth control that the OB wanted me to. I ended up, and this wasn't for my hormones, but really just for birth control, getting an IUD, which is something I wanted since my second kid. And I just like never did it. And I did it maybe like a year ago. Do you think that that's like, what are your thoughts on that? I know like the hormones are less, and whatever. But it's a little, I was saying this to Katie, it's a little hard to track your period because I can kind of tell like I'm in like what's week I'm in just based on how I feel, but you don't really have that definitive because there's nothing, you don't really get your period or maybe you just get like a wipe of something and you're like, oh, I guess that's my period, but it's a little bit harder to track. So kind of what are your thoughts there? And like, how does that relate to getting this gut test and all of that?
Yeah. So the IUD, do you have a copper IUD? Do you have the hormone, like the Skylar, the Kaylee?
I forgot what it's called. It's not Mirena, but it's like a newer version of that.
Is it the Kaylee?
I'll tell you what it's called. I actually have it right here.
Just quick question. Did your headaches start around then or before, were they already happening before that?
Oh, they were happening way before.
Okay.
I just got this recently. My headaches, I've had probably for 5 years. And then this I got just recently, more so from like a birth control. Loletta, that's what it's called.
Okay. There are always these like, you know, sweet girls' names to make them sound so like,
I know.
Right. So first of all, having less hormones is still the same thing as having some hormones. It's like drinking half a cup of poison versus a full cup. And I'm not saying birth control is hormones and synthetic hormones. Well, synthetic hormones are they're an endocrine disruptor. That's what they are. They're a hormone disruptor. And so basically it's not like, they'll be like, this is a low hormone to make it sound better. It's the same.
So an IUD and birth control is essentially the same.
Well, it is, and the low dose pills and the low dose IUD, the same way.
Okay.
And then the IUDs, the other myth that doctors always used to say and still say today, which I don't understand how someone who went through 8 years of education and then a fellowship can still say this, that's because it's in the uterus, it's localized. It's localized hormones. It doesn't spread anywhere else in your body.
Exactly. That's what they told me. It's exactly what they said.
That's the biggest BS. And I've been saying this for a decade and then actually not a decade, like 7 years. And finally we got validation. There was an article in some science journal that came out in December of 2021 that was saying, oh, we found out that the hormones are actually systemic. They spread systemically. And here's this MRI of this woman's breast to prove it and yada, yada, yada. But women's symptoms are being dismissed for so long that we're saying like, I'm having all these issues. I know, but the hormones are local in IUD. So they're not local. They spread. Yeah, it really is because it goes into your bloodstream. So they should know better because they're freaking doctors. They know how the body works. And so it is systemic in the body. Now I will it's one thing I like about the IUD. I mean, I out of all of the birth control methods, one of the pros of the IUD is that you still ovulate or may ovulate. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of women don't because of the inflammation from the IUD, but ovulation is really what we want to be doing. The ovulation is how we make progesterone. Progesterone is what we need for our heart health, bone health, thyroid health, healthy mood. And when we don't ovulate, we don't make that. And so that's really important that we make that. So with the IUD, you have a chance of ovulating, even though you're not having a period, you're not seeing blood. Mm-hmm. What you can do is you can track your cycle by taking your basal body temperature. And then when you, and that's one of the fertility signs that we use in the fertility awareness method, which is my form of birth control that's hormone free. And I know after my temperature spiked and it's remained elevated for 3 days that I've ovulated. I also observed my cervical fluid. So it wouldn't matter if I had a period or not, because once you ovulate, you will start your period within 14 days or you're pregnant. It's coming or you're pregnant. So then you kind of know, okay, I ovulated, my temperature spiked, I ovulated. And then you also kind of feel it. You know, sometimes people have like, you know, a little, but you may not also be ovulating on the IUD. I have a lot of clients who haven't ovulated on the IUD. Now with the gut, the IUDs have been shown to create imbalances in the gut, especially with candida overgrowth. So that also can happen. Not always, but that can happen. So interesting. But it's kind of with the birth control pill and hormonal birth control, is pick your poison. Like that's why I'm like, which one is, so that I gave a while back and I still have it on my website. I have a free birth control masterclass. I mean, you can go on my website and watch it now. It's like 45 minutes and it breaks down every single type of birth control, hormone and hormone free, pros and cons of each, unbiased, not non-judgmental. And it's really just kind of pick, because what's right for you might not be right for me and might not be right for, you know, your friend. So it's like, we all have different needs and we're in different places in our lives. And so that's why I'm all about informed consent. So instead of just being told, this is what you need, being, these are your options and here's the pros and cons. And now you are a grown ass adult. Why don't you go home, think about it, make a decision and choose for yourself. And now that you have all the information present, and that's not happening in medicine. That's not happening with most female patients today.
I love everything that you're doing, what you're offering and how you're healing women and what you're just bringing to the forefront. These women's issues are so hush hush in so many cultures. Even just the fact that like, this was the first time I mentioned that I had a hysterectomy and I was embarrassed about it. Like there's no reason for that, So the awareness that you're spreading and teaching these women to self-advocate and everything you're doing it's really phenomenal. And we're so grateful to have you. And I know our listeners are going to learn a lot and potentially you're going to really help some of them just from an episode. So
yeah. And by the way, I love your Instagram and I love all the videos you do. They're so helpful. For our listeners. If you check out her Instagram page, it's at
The Period
Guru. And you've got all these great videos, just like little bits of information that are super helpful about diet and lifestyle and hormones. So anyway, I love it. So good job on that. Yeah.
I appreciate
really
that.
Good. It's really helpful.
And
we'll share it on our pages. Yeah.
Yeah. And how can our listener find you? Is it your website? So
on Instagram at The Period Guru, and my website is jennalongoria.com. So those are great places. I have so many free resources. I really do. I have tons of free resources on the website. I've got a pain-free period book. I've got a ebook. I've got a period solutions masterclass, a birth control recording. So pick your jam. And
nice.
I've got a period quiz.
In terms of your program, if our listeners want to sign up for your program and you do it virtual, I know you're based in Amsterdam, but can you work with anyone?
Yeah, I work online and I actually only do enrollment twice a year. So I'm currently, my enrollment starts actually next week. I don't know when this podcast is going out, but I enroll in the early spring, and I enroll in the fall. Enrollment period is usually 2 or 3 weeks or whenever the spots fill up. I work with 11 women because it is a 4-month program. So I can only see a certain amount of women each enrollment period. So there are options out there.
That's great. All right. So let's hit our wrap session really quickly because I have a feeling you have some good ones for us. So just a few questions. What is your favorite wellness or beauty hack?
For me, the lemon water first thing in the morning. I couldn't imagine starting my day without 16 ounces of warm lemon water. And I put a little bit of sea salt in there. That just, hydrates you, makes your skin look great for the liver and detoxing, toxins away from the body, endotoxins, hormones. And I think that would probably be my wellness hack, would be the lemon water.
That's a good one. And I've read that that's good for your gut too. It kind of
absolutely
to get moving. Yeah.
It helps with motility. So in the morning it gets things moving and it helps stimulate the liver. It helps make your bile, not because our bile that our gallbladder releases to break down fats sometimes can get kind of sludgy and then it can't do its job. And the lemon water can make it kind of thinner in consistency. So it's and it's just, and you're hydrating. And the sea salt has minerals in it like sodium and potassium, which a lot of us are deficient in. So I always recommend people add a 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt to every liter of water to remineralize. So I do that first thing in the morning with like a little bit of sea salt and lemon, a half a lemon squeezed, and 16 ounces of warm water first thing in the morning.
I need to try that. Yeah, I need to try that. All right. So this is what we call your 5-minute flow. You just got out of the shower and dried off. Uber, they do have Uber in Amsterdam. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Uber just alerted you and they're 5 minutes away. What are you going to do? What's your holy grail, your go-to, your routine to get out the door and get into that Uber in 5 minutes?
Oh, wow. Okay. So usually I'll go to the bathroom one last time before I get to the Uber.
Always important.
Yeah. And, I guess, I don't know, like make sure I have everything in my purse. I guess that would be the thing. Make sure I have like my chapstick and my phone and all of that jazz. And and then I'm always running late. So forgetting something and then coming back inside to go get that thing, taking off my shoes and then getting that thing and then putting my shoes back on. And that would be it. Yeah.
That's great. That's funny. All right. And last one, how do you maintain your daily nirvana?
Oh man. Meditation. Absolutely. Nice. I love to meditate first thing in the morning, and I have this near infrared red light, and I sit in front of that lamp while I meditate. And that really just helps me just start the day and just ground and add some present, just kind of calm my nervous system. I love that.
What brand red light do you have? I'm looking into getting one.
Yeah, I like the BioLite. It's not advertised that much. And so then you don't pay all the price for the advertisements and stuff of other companies. So I like the BioLite. That's a good one.
Okay.
Nice.
Good to know.
Great.
Noted. So thank you so much for being on our show, Jenna. This was amazing. I learned so much. Thank you for answering all of my detailed questions, but I think I'm not alone in saying that, we all need to be more educated. And I think this will be so helpful for our listeners. So thank you so much for coming in the show. We definitely will probably want to have you back for a second round of questions. I'm sure our listeners will have a lot of questions for you. So thank you so much for spending time with us today. And I will kick it to Katie. We always like to end with a mantra to set the tone.
Yes. Thanks, Amy. And thank you, Jenna. This was such an illuminating session. So it's very exciting. All right. Our mantra for this week. Everything I am going through is planting something valuable in me. I think that is a really powerful one. And it's so hard to remember when you are going through things, but just repeat that when needed. So yes.
Good one.
Yeah. All right. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to Nirvana Sisters. For more information on this episode, check out the show notes, please subscribe, and leave us a review. Also, find us on Instagram at Nirvana Sisters. If you loved what you just listened to or know someone that would, please share it and tag us. Tune in next week for a fresh new episode of Nirvana Sisters. We'll continue to watch out for all things wellness so you don't have to. Bye.